So it's about noon. Are we ready to get started? Ready to get started? So in this room, the mic's sensitive, so I think they can basically hear everyone if you're online. And then online, can you hear and can you respond back if you can hear and you're online?
Hello from New Zealand.
New Zealand, awesome. Anybody else?
Also New Zealand can also hear.
More New Zealand. What time is it in New Zealand?
San Jose in.
Okay. And then who else was online? Lana, okay. If you're online, as we go through, there will be a portion for question and answer, and I'll let you know when that is. We can hear you here in the room. And as we go, if you can keep your mic muted, that would be awesome. So let's get started. First, I'm Tim Tsukamoto here in the Sacramento office, and I'm talking today about lean practices, adding value, and unlocking potential. All right. To get started, this is a little agenda of what we'll go over today. Just briefly, an introduction, ground rule discussion, a little bit of background on lean as practice, an introduction to the lean principles. We'll go into a little bit of detail on practice that impacts our business, design and construction, specifically structural engineering. Talk a little bit about tools and processes that are available to us today, and then finish up with some questions and a plus delta. Okay. So I'd like to start with a question. Usually when I have meetings or presentations, I like to start with a question. I usually like to go around and get everyone to introduce themselves and answer a question. For the sake of time today, a lot of material is going to come out. Just take a look at what this question is. Hold that in your mind as we go through and think about how what we talked about today can be applied. So the question is, what's your biggest frustration with design and construction? And if you don't touch design and construction, in what processes you do, functions that you do serve, what's your biggest frustration? Like I said, hold that in your mind as we go through. And normally this would be a introduce every single person. Rules of engagement. So a lot of these are going to be sort of common sense, respect sort of rules that will help meetings go smooth. A couple that I want to point out for specifically today: keep an open mind. So information is going to come out. It's going to be a little bit different than maybe you've heard or experienced before. Keep an open mind on how you might apply that and try to receive that in. And then as we go through, if you're watching time, I've got an hour, just give me a little flag if we're going long. I like to give these, empower everyone to be part of what we're doing as we go forward. So a little bit of background within design and construction in the US. Dodge Analytics did a survey of construction projects here in the US that measured the outcomes. And what they looked at was budget and schedule. And what they found was that projects that implemented lean behaviors tended to be better performing. And you see by the statistics, those projects with high lean intensity, meaning they applied more than one of the techniques we'll talk about later, tended to come out 3 times more likely to come out ahead of schedule and 2 times more likely to come out ahead or under budget. And so that's a big deal for us. Maybe not us as structural engineers, as consultants, but as our industry, as our owners of where value lies and what they can do with that either extra time or extra dollars. So a little bit about lean. So lean is a journey. You're going to experience a little bit today, and hopefully as we go along, progress along this journey. Just show hands in this room, where would you rank yourselves in terms of lean knowledge, or where do you think you are on this journey? Show of hands. So anyone in the proficient range? No? Competent? Competent, all right, 1. Advanced beginner? Advanced beginner? You're aware, done some things like maybe pull planning or some of those types of things, great. Novice, all right, big show of hands, novice. So this might be your first introduction. Leticia, I wouldn't say I'd say advanced beginner. You already went through this once with me. Expert, we'll come back to you, Sumin, expert. But that's good. So we're sort of introducing concepts today. A lot's going to come out, like I said. And expert, and be careful with the term expert when we're talking about lean practice. So expert implies that you have nothing more to learn. And what we're doing with lean practice is always learning, continuously improving. And that's why you see the journey of the practitioner, this circle, kind of going back and forth between proficient and advanced beginner. As you learn things, you're going to test new theories and then improve your process, improve what you do.
Where are you, Tim?
Where am I? I'm in that loop, the dotted loop, constantly. Right. So on certain things, I will push that upper edge of proficient to expert, but then I'm always looking for some way to improve it. So reading a new material, experience a conference, and then going back to some beginning steps and seeing how I'm going to implement that. So that's sort of the cycle that we want to be in. Lean. Lean is a term that comes from manufacturing. And if you think about what manufacturing does, there's a very linear process to manufacturing. Steps happen. And along that process, lean is about the systematic elimination of waste along that process. And it's been tried to adapt to construction or knowledge work, what we do. But this is the pure definition of lean. We'll go through a little bit. That definition introduces this concept of waste, and within manufacturing has identified 8 wastes that contribute to the manufacturing process and creating a product. These are those 8 wastes. Can anyone think of how one of these wastes might apply to something that we do in this room? And don't all jump out. I can call on people. So Mike, think of a waste.
So the waiting, you're waiting on somebody else to get information to you.
Mike says waiting. That's a good waste that we see a lot of. Yep. Anybody else?
Underutilized talent.
Underutilized talent. Without a picture. All right. Great. How would you say that is a waste or an example that you could see how we would mitigate that?
It's easy to get pigeonholed into one task and not expand your horizon and do multiple things that you're proficient in or expert at.
So we should all be looking for ways that we can add more value and maybe other opportunities and reaching out, something like that. Way to eat your sandwich while I'm having a conversation. Okay. Rework of errors. How would you consider that a waste in what you do?
If you see something that's inefficient and maybe not correct in general, and you know a better way of doing it, instead of just sticking to the tried and true, because we've always done it this way, look for a way to improve the system.
So this is a very important point. So Sabrina says the phrase "we've always done it this way" is a big waste, and hold on to that. We'll come back to that. Good thought. Anybody else before we move on? Awesome. So waste. Within the manufacturing world, they came up with 5 lean principles. And the top, they started with value. And when we talk about value in terms of lean, we're talking about value in the eyes of the customer. So value in the eyes of the customer. And you can think about what we do, where those customers might be. And that's what you want. That's what we're trying to create, value for the customer. The second is the value stream. So the value stream is a process, anything that you need to do to create that value. That's the value stream. Pull is a concept of where you do things or we do things as it adds value and not before. So an example would be the example that comes up a lot is like the way that grocery store stock shelves, right? There's something there, but there's not a huge inventory, and as that product is removed, it gets replenished for consumers to see. That's pull. Flow is something that we would like to focus on. Flow is along that value stream, making sure that things move constantly, right? That there's no backup. And a good way to see this in our daily lives is if you think about driving into work. So everyone drives into work and you experience traffic, right? Would your drive be more efficient if the traffic was continuously flowing, even if it might be at a lower speed, than to go fast and slow down and cause this sort of compression wave? So that's the idea of flow. And then finally, continual improvement. And that's what we really want to focus on within our practice, always getting better. So these are the 5 principles that come out of manufacturing. Any questions or comments from the group here? Any questions or comments from the group online over what we've just gone over? Hearing none, we will move on. So I often get this question, what is lean? And when I get this question, it's usually in the context of design and construction within our AEC industry. And I always ask back, well, what do you think lean is? And I've gotten this sort of jumble. There's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of concepts, there's a lot of things that get thrown out there and applied. Someone on the line want to talk? Getting feedback. Feedback? It's okay. I'll move on. So you get this sort of scatter of information that's out there, maybe not all the way implemented. Uh, I actually created this slide specifically for Casey in our office because he's, as I talked to him about lean over the years, this is what he comes up with. Well, I don't really know. It's this kind of this thing, it's kind of that thing. It's kind of all these things, which is true. The clicker. All right. So to organize that, really you have ideas and concepts, and then you have processes and tools. So they sort of get
call the phone number. Do you have cell phone?
cataloged this way.
Just call the phone number.
I won't touch on each of these. We'll touch on specific tools later in the presentation, but just know that there's sort of an ideas concept side and a tools processes side. So great. My presentations I like to give are interactive, and so hopefully if you're in your own office, you can join us at your desk. What we're going to do now is have an activity, and we're going to have an activity called co-creating a drawing. So if you're eating, you might have to put your stuff down for a second. I'm going to get a volunteer to pass out some paper. Leticia, thank you. And we probably also need pens. One per two people. So the idea is to get into pairs, just, with whoever's sitting next to you. And we'll go through this exercise. And actually, while Leticia is doing that, maybe we'll get 2 volunteers in this room to do it on the board for us. So,
Tim,
yes?
Lana, will you remind everyone to go on mute? There's a lot of background noise.
Yeah, awesome. I was trying to do that. Yeah, so if anyone on the GoToMeeting, if you're not asking a question right now as I've prompted you to, then please mute. Because I can hear you, and apparently Lana can hear you too. So since no one wants to volunteer, I'm going to ask Adam and Carl. All right, Adam and Carl. So you're both going to get to participate. You're going to come up to the flip chart here and get to participate. So we'll take a look at the rules real quick. So co-creating a drawing. Whoops, sorry. Whoop. Co-creating a drawing. So the deal here is that each of you are going to take turns putting a mark, a line, shape on the paper. Once you pick up your pen, your turn is over, and then your partner will go. During this time, there won't be talking, so no verbal communication between them. You need to create a drawing, and you also need to title it one letter at a time, kind of this trade-off, same deal. The last thing is it's a timed event, so I'm going to give you 2 minutes to create something, and then we'll do a little bit of talking about it. So create your drawing and then title your drawing, okay? And I'll give you a little bit of countdown on the timing. So they'll give you a 30-second warning. No talking between them. If you're out in the audience, watch first, and then we'll do it again. Okay? Ready? Go. 2 minutes. You picked up your pen. Oh. Hand it off.
Does it end up as something?
No talking. So the audience can heckle. I welcome heckling in these activities because it's really fun. No whip, no whip. So something's sort of taking shape. You're about 30 seconds in right now. This is by far the most creative at the board drawing that I've seen so far. I hope you guys are getting to a point where you kind of understand maybe a shape or a title. You're coming up on a minute. Okay, something's starting to coming together. You're coming up on 30 seconds remaining. So you might want to start thinking about creating a title for this drawing.
Can't stop drawing. Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, so we're starting to get some letters for this title. Sorry, I can't see. And you're just about out of time. And time. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Excellent drawing. Excellent drawing. So you just saw Adam and Carl do this. We're going to do this in the pairs at your tables. Again, 2 minutes, create this drawing together, taking turns. Once you lift your pen, your partner will draw. You need to create a title also. Okay? 2 minutes. And if you're on the call, hopefully you're doing this in your office. Before everyone starts, if you can come together just for a minute. If you're remote and you're doing this in your own office, I do want to see these come back. So when we're done with this exercise, if you can scan those or take photos of those and send them to me, that would be awesome. Okay. Su Min says Night of 1,000 Drawings. Okay. Let's everybody ready. Okay, 2 minutes. 2 minutes starting now. And remember, we're not talking during this, so it should be fairly silent. And I'll give everyone the same 30-second intervals. The engineering table in the back over here has a lot of straight lines going on. A lot of straight lines. And I see some drawings coming together. You're about a minute in. Very cool. Adam and Carl are now heckling the back of the room since they have already done theirs for everyone to see. Just so that out there you don't see this, but Adam and Carl are heckling. You've got about 30 seconds remaining, so you might want to start thinking about a title, working through a title. About 10 seconds, so maybe speed up your title. You guys are on the same wavelength. All right, and time. And time. Awesome. So if we can come together in this room, since we're broadcasting, if we can come over here in the back, I'm going to start throwing things at you guys. Over here in the back, if you can come together, just so we can keep going. We'll have discussion, but let's make this discussion among the entire group. So to start, how did everyone feel going through this exercise? What were some of your thoughts? And don't jump out. I can call on people here too. Confusion. Why did you find confusion?
Because I was drawing random shapes, and he was also drawing random shapes. So we didn't go anywhere very good.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other thoughts other than confusion? Confidence. What did you think about confidence? You knew where she was going, and
I would say it took an immediate level of pre-planning.
You guys cheated. Okay, next. Anticipation. Can you explain what you mean by anticipation? Sure. Okay.
Anticipation, because whenever I drew something, I was anticipating what you would do.
Anticipating what your partner might do next. So, would you say that you had to keep sort of that anticipation and some level of open-mindedness as you were going through the exercise?
Yes.
Anybody else? Open-mindedness?
We had to learn to communicate in a new way.
Had to learn to communicate in a new way coming through the phone. Thank you.
Really like draw something and move my pen more than once. So I had to think of ways to get more out so that she could figure out what I was trying to do without moving
Awesome. So,
my pen up.
ingenuity, having to draw without picking the pen up to create those shapes and shape where you were going with it. What about as we were getting to this titling? Any thoughts as we were getting to the titling piece?
On the same level, ingenuity is a matter of how many letters can I put on one paper without lifting up my pen. So suddenly I learned how to write cursive again.
So yeah, a little bit of going back to something else. Okay. So learning how to write or going back to writing cursive so you can get more letters out at one time, a different way of communicating. These are all great comments. And going back to, I think something Marina said about the anticipation and the open-mindedness, that's what we need to carry. That's what we want to carry through our thought process and being open to both what we're talking about here today and what we do, the processes that we participate in. Any other final thoughts on this activity from the phone or online? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. So I touched on this before with the expert comment from Sue Min, and I've given you a lot of background so far, and I want to be a little bit cautious as we move forward. This is a graphic of the road to mastery. And so right now, we started at the beginning at the what does all this mean thing, and we're progressing up this gaining knowledge. And so it's very easy for us to get to a point and think that we've got a bunch of knowledge and we know everything. I'll be cautious. There's a lot more to come. And as we go through today, you'll probably understand that there's a lot more to come. So just be careful. Don't get stuck on what's called Mount Stupid, according to the graphic. Not my term, graphic term, but be careful. So within design and construction in the US, the organization, the Lean Construction Institute, created a definition that's a working definition of what our industry does. And what they aim to do is create a culture of respect, with continuous improvement aimed at adding value and eliminating waste. And so we get a lot of those manufacturing ideas that were coming back from the lean principles in manufacturing, and we're adding this culture of respect. And that the idea there is that we're a service-based industry and we interact with people. What we do is interacting with people. We create buildings for people to occupy. We communicate directly with others, and so that as the core tenet of lean construction is where we want to be. Culture of respect. And so then taking that one step further for what we do, structural engineering, which is primarily a design function, what we want to think about is adding value. So that culture of respect to add value, and we want to not focus on that bit about eliminating waste, at least in our creative process, because what it does is it closes options off. If we focus on eliminating waste, we might lose some of that creative, something new out there that we might not explore otherwise if we were trying to eliminate waste in our process. So think about that as it applies to a creative process and what we do as structural engineers. And I talked about adding value, and I really want to focus on adding value. We want to focus on adding value. So has anyone seen this graphic before? It's the McLeamy curve. And so what the McLeamy curve shows is on the horizontal axis time, and you'll see sort of the unit of measure is milestone stages of a typical design and construction project, and on the vertical axis, effort, okay, time and effort. And the green dotted line there, the green dashed line there starting high and then going down and to the right, that is a line that represents your ability to impact outcomes. So the ability to impact outcomes. And the red line going up from the bottom and going to the top is the cost of making changes. So the ability to impact outcomes and the cost of making changes, and they oppose each other, right? That makes sense. As you go along in a process, things become more solidified. If you start making changes, you introduce rework, it becomes more costly, right? Um, it's kind of a yellow line that's labeled number 3. You see a hump sort of in here. That represents a traditional design and construction process. We start at the beginning of the process kind of slow, ramp up to some full-scale effort somewhere around when we submit for permit, and then into construction. That's the majority of the effort, and then it tails off. So you can tell that that curve sits mostly on the side of into more cost and in outside of that area where we're able to affect outcomes. So what we want to do is shift that line to the left, and that's what that blue line there represents. Does that make sense? Any questions, comments on the McLeamy curve? If you're interested, read about it. He was an architect, came up with this idea, shared it with the industry, and it's something that I think illustrates what we're trying to do very well. So another activity. All right, so we're going to go to the second activity, and I do need 2 volunteers. Everyone out there is going to have a chance to do this activity too. No volunteers in the room, so I'll volunteer for you. How about Rob? Rob, since you're represented up here as Hobby Rob, and if you could rip this off while I pick the other volunteer, how about? Actually, we don't have room for the second volunteer, so just Rob. Sorry, Rob. Sorry, Rob. So in this activity, what we're going to do, if you stop crumbling that, is no, we appreciate volunteers. What we're going to do is we're going to create 3 columns. And if you're out there, you can participate in this. We'll do this together since we're going to be a little bit short on time. But if you can draw lines to make 3 columns on your paper. So if you've got paper there, if we can distribute out paper, if you have, 3 columns. And so what we're going to do in these columns is in the first column, we're going to write the numbers 1 through 10. No, don't write yet. This is a timed event also. So just, let me explain it. First column, numbers 1 through 10. In the second column, letters, A through whatever's 10 in the alphabet. I don't remember off the top of my head right now. Whatever's 10 in the alphabet, A through whatever we get to. And then the third column, Roman numerals 1 through 10.
Want them in order or any order?
In sequential order, starting from top to bottom. But what we're going to do is I want you to write them from left to right. So write them in rows. Number 1, letter A, Roman numeral 1. Okay. And before we start, we're going to time this. I got to get to a stopwatch. So we're going to time this. Everyone's got paper. Everyone's ready to go.
So to clarify.
To clarify, yes.
I'm not
Question.
Going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going 1,
Across.
2, 5.
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. So again, number 1, letter A, Roman numeral 1. Okay. Everyone ready? And here we go. Go. Everyone's diligently working. It's very quiet now. If you mess up, keep going. And Rob, if you can write up there 42 seconds. Anyone else done? Done? You're at 42 seconds, 45, 48. If you want to keep track of your time, great. Everyone about done now? It's been about a minute. Worked through everything. So we're in the 42 to minute range. That's pretty normal for this process. How did everyone feel about this process? How did you feel? What did you think?
I wasn't going to remember my Roman numerals.
Rob was worried he wasn't going to remember his Roman numerals. Awesome. It looks like you got all of them in order. Yes. I've had letters that were repeated in this process as we went through, so it's not uncommon. Any other comments? Carl.
I had to just think about the letters. The other ones is just they just go with the flow.
Okay.
So just remember just the letters.
Okay. So you had to think about that transition between a number and a letter and a number. Was that difficult? Did anyone find that not the most difficult process? Okay. Anyone else? You were going to say something. Marina.
I was just going to comment what he said. It was kind of jarring to my brain. I wanted to work in each column.
So Marina's saying that she wanted to work in each column instead of going across. It was jarring to her brain. And so if we were going to think about an analogy to what we do, we could think of this as different tasks that we're working on at a given time. And how might this be representative of what we do daily? We might be getting phone calls, people coming to talk to us, emails, and we're constantly switching from task items, right? The different lists representing those task items. Any other comments? We'll move on. There's a second part of this exercise. No? Okay. So Rob, if you can rip that off and let's, no, not crumple it up. If we can find a spot to stick it on the wall for now. And so if you're out there, if you want to flip your paper or get a new sheet, same thing, 3 columns. So in that discussion, what I heard about is there might be an improvement to our process that we can make that might make us better, right? Same thing, 3 columns. Same idea, numbers, letters, Roman numerals. And this time, is everyone ready to go? Everyone ready to go? Everyone out in digital land ready to go also, hopefully. Sorry. So this time we're going to work in the columns, okay? Write all the numbers, 1 through 10, all the letters, A through J, yeah? And then all the Roman numerals, 1 through 10, okay? Everybody ready? It's the same thing, timed event. At the end of each column for Rob, I'm going to give him a time, okay? Actually, I'll wait till I give you the time at the end to keep, so you can keep going, so you don't have to stop at random. Okay, everybody ready? And go. Anyone done? I'm hearing finishing, and Rob's done. 30 seconds at the end there. And for that second column, you had it at 9 seconds. No, sorry. Good. So your first one was 6 seconds for the first column. You had about 14 seconds on the second column, and then 30 seconds to end. Did everyone else see similar concepts? How did you feel about the second time we did this? Rob, if you want to step away so the group can see now. Thank you. Much easier. So again, we made a change to our process and created, maybe some would call this more value. Yes? Any other ideas, concepts, thoughts? Focus. So you focused on one task at a time, and that was beneficial to you. So if these were products that we had to get out to a customer, we would have created value in the first 6 seconds in this case, right? And the other case over there, we would have created the same value, but it took us 42 seconds to get through all 3 at the same time, juggling those tasks, right? And so can you think of a way that this might, in what we do, help us identify where the best value goes? Where do we need to do, what do we need to do to create the most value for our customers? Right? Nobody, everyone's kind of sitting there. Carl, I like you, Carl.
No. So sometimes even when you're checking something, you can either check as you go, or you can do a certain method to check certain things first.
So
organize it. When you organize how you do things, they just go by much faster rather than just working as you go.
So Carl says maybe if we batch things into an organization versus doing things just kind of as they happen. I think that's what I heard. Yeah. And so that's an interesting concept. This idea of small batches is a concept that gets out there where we can create these small batches of value and then hand them off to our customers so that we're always putting value out in front of us. Any other comments? How about from online? No other comments online? Great. Oh,
Itemize the task.
itemize the task. What do you mean by that?
Well, so you're just thinking of one row at a time, so you're just dealing with that one item and doing all the tasks pertaining to that one item.
Right. Okay, so doing all the tasks that pertain to the one item, focusing on one thing at a time?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Think of it in that way instead of scattering all over.
Great. Any other ideas, thoughts? All great thoughts. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. So what we did was talk about generating and creating value and making sure that value comes out first, focusing on tasks, and that transitions to some of the tools we have available to us that are specific to design and construction and also not. So starting with the top of the list, the big room. The big room is really a meeting, and show of hands in the room, how many have attended a big room or participated in a big room style meeting? About 50-50, about maybe like 75%. Okay. The concept behind a big room is that you're coming together, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, coming together to create that value in a focused environment. The next item on our list, LPS, is last planner system. And so how many have participated in last planner system? Show of hands in this room. About 3. So how about if I ask it a different way, how many of you have participated in pull planning? Pull planning, different term. About the same, okay? So pull planning, last planner system, that's another tool that we have. This third on our list is SBD, set-based design. Anyone heard of set-based design, participate in set-based design? All right, 1, okay. And then the last one is continuous improvement. PDCA is a Deming cycle, but it's really focused on continuous improvement. We'll go into depth a little bit more on these. These are where we want to start with our lean tools and develop those across our company throughout all the offices. A little bit more in depth, maybe a little bit more rigorous concepts that we'll want to learn. Starting at the top here, A3s. So A3 problem solving or A3 thinking is a way to capture complicated processes and decisions into a single report format on a single sheet of paper. So look for more on that. I know I owe New Zealand a template on A3s in progress. We'll get that out to you. The second one on here, CBA or choosing by advantages, is a decision-making process that allows a large group to make a complicated decision based on factors and the differences between the alternates. So the advantages that the idea is that decisions are based on the importance of advantage. That would be the fundamental rule of CBA. That's a little bit, we'll develop some training around that. That's a little bit out there. The third on this list is root cause analysis, 5 why. And so when we see breakdowns or opportunities to improve, we really want to get to the root cause and solve the root cause instead of that symptom for chronically late on something or there's an issue that we see coming up. We want to get to the root cause, solve the root cause, because that will solve all of the problems downstream. And so one way to do that is this 5 why methodology, where you ask why as many times as it takes to get to a root cause that we can solve in our process. The last one on here is a more complicated idea that comes that encompasses all of project delivery from the owner's business case all the way through operations. It's called target value delivery. There's 2 books that Lean Construction Institute has put out on target value delivery that are good starting points. The industry is pushing this as the next wave iteration of delivery methodology. So if you're interested, reach out to me. I can connect you with some resources on target value delivery. I did say that we would go through a little bit more detail on those first 4 topics. The first one, the big room. So like I said, how many participated in big room again? And so what was your experience on the big room, Mike?
It was effective to have, being able to communicate with even some mechanical, electrical, early on in the project to try to work out some.
Awesome. So Mike's saying communicate with the different trades early in the project, and that's key. So the big room, you want to get started as early in the process as you can, and the idea is to gather all the stakeholders, create this cross-functional team where decisions and issues can get worked through early in a simple format versus getting too far down the line and too far on that McLean curve where things become more costly. A couple keys to the big room, and it participated in the big room. How would you say you felt in that big room environment? Were you welcomed into it? Were your ideas, were you able to share ideas freely?
Yes.
Mike says yes. Anybody else? Big rooms? So the idea with the big rooms, if you remember back to those rules of engagement, that you're creating this environment where ideas are safe. People are able to speak out, help the team move forward, focus on advancing the work. One of the concepts that we see a lot of teams now looking at is co-location, where you actually populate together with your design or construction team and work through the project together as a separate unit. It's gaining popularity. So the last planner system, I mentioned I'd talk a little bit about the last planner system. The last planner system was created specifically for design and construction about 20-ish years ago. And it's often referred to as the 5 connected conversations. And it has these basic steps. And the idea is that as a group in a big room with a cross-functional team, you go through your effort and plan your work to try to make more reliable comments and gain schedule reliability. This is why those high lean intensity projects can come out ahead of schedule, 3 times more likely to come out ahead of schedule than a traditionally planned project. We had some experience on last planner system pull planning. We had some experience on last planner system and more experience on pull planning. If you notice that pull planning is a part of the last planner system, but it's only a piece of it. A full implementation of the last planner system also includes this big loop that is learning, and that's that continuous improvement piece that we want to focus on. So last planner system, like I said, was developed for design and construction, was sort of advanced through construction, where it's more closely related to a manufacturing process where things happen in sequence. Design is a little bit different than that. Ideas flow and things come together all at the same time. And so what we're often seeing is that there's a difference in the way that you need to plan. And what sort of captures it is this idea that you need to hand off incomplete information. And in that room, you're communicating how complete that information is. And sometimes a lot of information. Any thoughts? Who's done last planner in design or pull planning in design? Nobody? Jay, and what was your experience with pull planning and design?
I love it because we have a voice and we are able to get commitments from people that affect our outcomes, where normally if you're in a box in your own little office, you don't get as much influence over your own destiny.
So using it as a way to get more reliable commitments so that you're not wasting time doing work that's not value added. I heard that, yes. Anybody else? So one of the things that I'll caution us when we're talking about last planner system pull planning and design is it doesn't create a critical path. So by pulling the information and making commitments on doing work or creating tasks, handing off information when it needs to be done, we're not creating a critical path. What we're doing is creating a work plan, a flow of information that is one way to get to our target, our end date, our milestone. So not a critical path, but just want to throw that out there. Set-based design. Set-based design is a concept where you carry a lot of information forward at a very low level. So in what we do, that might be mainly in something like a structural system selection, where we would carry a lot of different structural systems at a conceptual level, maybe hand sketches, present them to our team, talk about what works and what doesn't with what's coming together in terms of a space plan or mechanical planning and that type of thing. And as we test those at this high level, we can drop those off as they don't apply to our system, and then create a more value-driven final product versus a point-based delivery method where we would go in and say, for this type of building, it's always a steel building. And then you would go through and do a bunch of detailing, get to the end and find out, oh, there's not enough space for the ductwork with the steel building. And now you have to go back to the beginning and start over and creating this rework loop back. Right? So that's the concept with set-based design. The concept of set-based design and the practice of set-based design comes into play a lot within the big room. You can see that transfer of information and also within target value delivery. And continuous improvement, something that we really want to focus on, like I mentioned, is this idea that we can always get better. What you see on the screen is different methods that can get us to continuous improvement. I think in the previous slide I mentioned PDCA. It stands for Plan, Do, Check, Act, and it's called the Deming cycle because it was created by Deming. But really, what that allows us to do is in our process plan what we're going to do, check it. It's really a scientific sort of process, right? Measure what we're doing against it, and then make a correction. And so the next time we're getting better, and we're continuously doing that. We're always getting better. The next concept, plus delta, we'll do at the end of this. That's sort of just a quick survey of how we're doing, what can add value, what added value, and what can we do to add more value. Start, stop, keep is a method that I've used to do that last one, retrospectives, where we work with the team and we give a bunch of people stickies. It's what you see here. And you write down ideas that you can then group individually ideas, and you can find out where the group was generating value. It's a good concept if you have a group that's maybe a little more shy, doesn't like to speak out, that you can generate conversation. Has anyone in this room participated in any of these continuous improvement practices? Sumin's nodding his head. Which ones?
Most of them, I would say.
Most of them. Which one is your favorite? Which one adds most value for you?
My favorite, I mean, plus and delta is also always my favorite too. So that,
plus delta. It's a quick one. It's one that is often done at the end of meetings, and like I said, we'll do it at the end of this presentation, so I can gather comments and value and see where we can make tweaks and make this this presentation more valuable for everyone. Before we go to that, were there any other comments on continuous improvement? Continuous improvement, like I said, something we want to carry at the forefront of what we do into maybe core values of what we do. So I gave you a lot of information on lean manufacturing concepts, what's being done in the industry. But really what we're talking about is a set of behaviors that generates a set of outcomes, right? And the set of behaviors that we're focusing on are respect for people and that continuous improvement. And if we do that, then we're going to come out with more value and less waste. Right? Any comments? Good. A lot of head nodding. All right. So as we do that, you know, we're really big right now.
Can I just ask a question from the side here?
Which idea?
My name is Greg. I'm from New Zealand. How can you just quickly explain the key differences between lean, as you're describing it to us this morning, and the quality systems that we've been using in the past? Because they're all about continuous improvement, adding value, and reducing waste. They're all about open communications and mutual respect. So are there any key differences, or is it more a update of quality the way we were taught a few years back?
So I heard, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback, so I'm going to try to summarize. I heard, are there any key differences between the methodologies we're using and what we talked about in terms of lean delivery or lean concepts? Is that right?
Yes, that's a reasonable summary. Thank you.
Okay, and I heard you say that you're already focused on continuous improvement and mutual respect for people. So with the process that you described, I would say no. Those are directly in line with what we want to achieve and what lean is there to achieve. I will say that a lot of our experiences are different than that. Even though we talk about mutual respect and focusing on continuous improvement, and I'm getting feedback. Sorry, thank you. That's not the way that, at least in the U.S. contract records, are set up, and that's not the way they've been set up for a long time. And so it's created sort of these silos of work, silos of information that don't communicate very well with each other. You get a design silo, you get an owner silo, you get a construction silo, and between those is where a lot of the waste that we see in the US being generated. And as designers and industry leaders, that's what we want to work towards breaking down, at least in terms of the way that we're set up here and what our construction industry has seen. Did that adequately answer your question?
Yes, that was good, thank you. I'll just further comment that a company I used to work for, our secondary strap line was silos to synergies, which I thought encompassed the idea very well.
Yeah, let's talk a little more offline. I'm getting a little feedback, so having a little bit of trouble hearing. I think the rooms here is having a little trouble hearing, but I'm interested to hear what you've done in the past and what you've seen out there. Let's follow up.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So, like I said, we're busy right now. We're sort of in an upturn in economic cycle, at least in the U.S., and we want to be careful of is that we don't get into this cycle where we're too busy to look for ways to improve our process. So just take in the cartoon. It was a fun cartoon to throw in here. And we can all probably think of ways where we've been this guy pushing the basket with square wheels when someone was standing to the side trying to help us out, or another solution was out there. So just keep that in mind, is that, you know, even though we're busy, we want to definitely look for ways to improve our process. And to end, hopefully we've talked about this a little bit, that life is full of processes and all processes can be improved. So keep that in your mind. Where to start with all this? Fix what bugs you. So if you start with what bugs you, you'll be on a path to getting better, to improving at least your own circumstance. And then second to that would be share it with all of us, right? Share it with all of us so we can all get better. And last, as an idea, I think if we could strike the word no from our vocabulary and replace that with a yes if, we'll get a long way towards this idea of embracing respect for people and continuous improvement. The idea with no is that it ends our conversation. You say no and it ends the conversation. If you say yes if, you're hearing what's being asked of you and you're coming up with the ways that it could be possible, right? And it generates a discussion where is our value going to be coming from? Any questions? So we have about 10 minutes for questions. I'll say maybe like 5 minutes for questions because I do want to do a plus delta. No questions from the room. What about out there on the web? Any questions?
I have a question. To what extent, when you talk about improving, to what extent are you also looking economically, financially?
So economics is something that, you know, financials is something that we always want to look at as a parameter of the improvements that we make.
I'm saying, because, like, example, sometimes in the concept of improving might actually slow down the work and make us less efficient, or it might cost us financially.
Yeah, so we want to be careful with that concept, because I think what you're saying is that there might be a short-term burden to us for a long-term gain. So we need to balance where that's going to be, and strategically as a whole, that's what we need to think about, is that yes, we might take a little bit of a short-term maybe slow down in the production process or whatever it is in order to pick up a long-term overall gain in our overall process. And really, I didn't touch on it in this presentation, but there's a whole concept about optimization of the whole. And as a unit, as an industry, we want to look at ways to optimize the whole. Some things that we may offer to do may make our process less efficient, but if it adds value to our customers, we might consider doing that, because there's value in a long-term relationship with our customer, relationship with our industry and our people. So as those ideas come out, let's explore them. Let's not shut them down. Let's eliminate that no and talk about where it is. Sure. So I won't talk about specific clients or markets because we're global, company wide, and what I would talk about is pretty specific locally. But I will talk about out there in the industry, the top things that will be confronted with or exposed to are going to be last planner system, this idea of planning, collaborative planning, pool planning, that's out there, and we'll see some exposure to that. The concept of continuous improvement is going to be a big one. Those couple. And then target value delivery. It's sort of in early stages in terms of industry adoption as a delivery method, but it's out there and it's going to be something that is going to be more common as owners, and we're talking about owners that are serial builder owners that are spending millions or billions annually on construction, capital improvement. They're the ones that are sort of pushing the envelope on those types of things because they see those 3 times ahead of schedule, 2 times ahead of budget type numbers, and that's what's driving the economics for that for owners. Does that hopefully answer? Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, it's Greg from New Zealand here again. Two things that we seem to be having pushed upon us are collaborative risk
I'm
management.
going to stop you just a second because I've got someone on, I think it's New Zealand, that's asking a question. So I've got 2 questions simultaneous. I'll take New Zealand's and then I'll come back to yours. This is a good question.
Oh, thanks. It's Greg from New Zealand here again. 2 things we have in New Zealand at the moment, not necessarily within our company, but in the profession, are collaborative risk management at the start of a project with the architect and the project manager. And tied up with that is something called safety in design, which seems to be being pushed quite heavily. They kind of tie into this system of thinking quite well. Do you have something similar in California?
So that's a good question. And so for those in the room that hear, he said in New Zealand, there are concepts that are collaborative risk management and safety and design as concepts that are popular or becoming popular in New Zealand. And the question was in California or in the US, is there something similar? And the answer is yes. What we see is an integrated form of agreement. It's a contractual structure where we would put some of our profit at risk and then manage that risk together with the entire team. So that's one way. That's becoming more popular with, again, those serial, more sophisticated owner builders within the US. The second was I heard safety in design. I'm not sure what that means, but I would guess that somewhere there is a similar concept that's being explored in the US. And again, New Zealand, there's a global movement towards lean. There's a group internationally that is progressing these lean concepts as it applies to design and construction. We should talk more offline and get us all up to speed since we're a global company with that group and doing presentations and attending those functions. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. So then Marina's question.
Oh, it was, so for people that are new to this concept, how do you implement it within your projects or groups of people that are maybe new as well?
So if you're new to the process, how do you implement it within projects or groups of people that are new to the concepts also? I'll say carefully and slowly. Well, a lot of what we're talking about is a dramatic shift from the way we've operated as businesses, as entities for a long time. And so there's sort of this resistance to maybe changing. There's a concept out there or an idea that I think Sabrina said it earlier about that we've always done it this way. That's the way we've always done it. And that's a really hard thought process to overcome. But as we continue with the enthusiasm that we have to push continuous improvement in some of these concepts and look for opportunities to be leaders in industry, you'll see groups start to come around. So slowly, I would say if you're interested, let's talk and we'll formulate some strategies on what might be an appropriate level to dive in with a group. On an individual level, I think we can do this throughout. So, like I said, start with fixing what bugs you. That's a good spot. And then second to that, fixing what bugs you, share what you did so that the rest of us can also improve. Good question. Yep.
Piggyback on that.
Piggyback. All right.
Yeah. One thing that I do when I'm faced with someone who is like new to my way of thinking of something or something like that, I don't tell them, you got to do it this way. It's my way. My way's the best way. And you got to, you know, I say, may I suggest that we try this, or I've had great success with doing it this way. And so kind of respecting what you have always done, and we've done it this way since the dawn of time, with a, let me add to your idea. Respect where you are, but also respect where I'm coming from.
So I'm hearing a respectful way to sort of plant seeds that there might be a better way to do it, right? And then over time build on that. Yes? Okay, great. Model the behavior you want to see. Great, good comment. I'm going to wrap up questions. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk almost anytime. But I'd like to go through a plus delta exercise. And if I could get Leticia to write plus deltas for me. Can you flip the slide? That's the last one for me, or I will. Yep. Anyway, pluses are anything during this presentation that added value for you. Deltas are anything that we could do to improve or add more value the next time. So speak up, and Leticia will capture this for me. I'll say, how about for this exercise, this will primarily be for the room here. If you're remote, if you can just within your group do a similar exercise and then email those to me, I'll make sure that I follow up on them and get those incorporated. Sound good?
Love the interaction, that's a plus.
Plus interaction. Go ahead. Just
exposure to new concepts.
Exposure to new concepts. All right. Any other pluses? What about deltas?
We need more. The audio, it'd be nice to have more audio visual, see the people's faces maybe, and then also the lines.
More audio visual and more control over meeting lines. Okay. For deltas? Any other pluses or deltas in this room?
I like that everybody was included, not just for the structural side.
Like that everybody was included. So an inclusive presentation invite. It's a plus that we had globally too, right? Along that inclusion line. We got a lot of good feedback from our partners in New Zealand. Anyone else? Pluses or deltas? I really am looking for deltas because I want to know how I can make this better, right? Yes.
For those that are interested or incredibly new, additional information up front just to be a little bit more familiar.
Sure. Yeah. So, some takeaways early, handouts, something.
Or like an introductory PowerPoint in the beginning before, like with each
Oh, okay.
like
Yeah.
some key concepts to that way we.
So a little more write-up that comes out with the invite on what we're going to be talking about. Sure. Okay. Agenda. Yeah. Anybody else? We don't have to solve or mitigate what the deltas are, just capture them. Yep.
When I go onto webinars, when questions are asked online from people that are remote, the question can pop up on the screen.
Ah, okay. So more interface with our AV, I think, is kind of the way that the questions come in. I like that concept. Yep.
Hi. If you had a microphone that you could pass around the room, because those of us who are remote can't hear your audience asking questions. We can hear you okay, but not the questions that come from the floor.
Okay, good input. So that I can say that that's something that we have planned for the future. So thank you for that. We weren't sure. This is our first test run of a global live broadcast. So thank you all for participating, and we would like to welcome the feedback. Yep.
What you said, I think change is you can repeat that.
Oh no.
So change is basically inevitable.
So Kit says change is inevitable little by little. I'm going to translate.
Each change has a pros and cons, right? And you need to understand what pros and what con is, and you just have to mitigate the con if the whole result becomes that gain.
So there are pros and cons to every change, and that we need to understand the pros and cons so that we can mitigate cons if we're going to implement change, right? Kaizen. Kit will talk about that more in a presentation he'll give. Anybody else?
I like that.
All right.
instead of the no versus yes if, because there is a lot of, especially in mine, there's a lot of back as to why
Right.
everything is done. So great concept, but yes, if this happens,
Right.
we can make that.
Right. So the concept of eliminating no and talking yes if. Yep. Okay. In the back, Carl, you're awesome.
I also think thoughts would be more like real life examples for how Lean is applied. So something to help us more directly see how it directly applies rather than being a concept.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it was a delta because there weren't that many real life examples, but more examples of how these concepts apply to our actual work. Stay tuned. Okay. And I think we're a little bit over now, so I'd like to wrap up the overall presentation. Thank you for participating. Like I said, this was our first global broadcast, and I think this is getting recorded and posted. Is that right? So recorded and posted for anybody that needs to come back to what we talked about today or missed the presentation altogether. So thank you, everyone.